Hey, welcome into Stone Cold Stros Season 2, Episode 14. I'm Brandon Strange. I'm joined by Charlie Polillo and Josh Jordan. Read Charlie's column weekly on sportsmap.com and follow him on X at Polillo. Read Josh's work daily on sportsmap.com and follow him on X at JoshJordan975. Show support for your hometown guys in orange by hitting like on this video right now. And you can support our Drive to 25 by subscribing to the channel and helping us get one step closer to 25,000 subs. You guys have really been coming through for us, and we really do appreciate, and we appreciate all the support because if you guys don't support us, then we will cease to exist. At least the podcast will. It's not like a Back to the Future situation. Guys, the good news is that JV looks like JV again, and to a lesser extent, AJ Hinch still has that magic touch with pitching changes. But the bad news is a 3-3 roadie just isn't going to get it done. Charlie, we were talking before we hit go on the box here, and you noted 14 of the next 17 games against division rivals here. So if there was ever a time for the hay to get made, now would be a pretty good time to start making it. And so, outside of, them rushing Christian Javier back, which we can get into here, what are some of the things that you've seen from this team that give you some encouragement that they can take advantage of this stretch?
Well, look, with Monday night's game, the Astros are into the second quarter of the season, so it's not early anymore. But check this out. I'm going to be your one-man Mr. Sunshine. Deep trivia here. I'm not saying I can see clearly now. I'm definitely not saying the rain is all gone for the Astros. But the potential's here for bright, bright, sunny days. Even if the roof stays closed. Look, the first quarter of the season, if we're grading, it's an F, right? 15-25, quadruple that, you're 60 and 100. But grade it at least a little bit on a curve. Through their first 40 games, the Astros played 32 of them against teams with winning records. It's 80% of their games to date. Context always matters on the numbers. 32 games the Astros have played against teams with winning records. The Seattle Mariners have played 23 games against teams with winning records. The Texas Rangers, just 16 games against teams with winning records. And to go to the extreme, the Phillies, best record in baseball, they're really good. The schedule matters. The Phillies have played six games against teams with winning records. The Astros have already played 32. That kind of stuff balances out over the schedule, running 162 games. So the Astros start the week, obviously nowhere in what you'd call great shape, 6.5 behind Seattle, 6 behind Texas. But if they were in the American League East, they'd be just about dead and buried, right? 11.5 games behind the Orioles, double digits behind the Yankees, behind the Guardians. If they were in the NL West with the Dodgers, it would be over already. If they were in the NL East with the Phillies already, it would be over. Hey, in the American League West, the worst division in baseball, the Astros picked the right year to dig themselves an early ditch and absolutely be able to climb out of it. And, it wasn't a winning road trip. Just as prior to that, it was another non-winning Astros homestand. But again, the schedule. They went 6-6 over the 12 games, 3 against the first-place Cleveland team, 3 against a very good Yankees team, 3 against Detroit. Okay, the Tigers are meh, but they won that series 2 out of 3. And having dropped 2 out of 3 before that was not a crime. So 6-6, predate that, the 2 over Colorado and Mexico. They're 8-6 in their last 14 games. So they haven't been bleeding out now for a while. I mean, they need a spurt. And you mentioned the schedule. Here's the opportunity. I mean, Oakland's been a surprise, I guess, in that Oakland hasn't just been travesty bad so far, but the A's aren't good. So the Astros, they need to take 3 out of 4 from Oakland here. Then you get a very good Brewers team for the weekend. You can get 2 out of 3 there. Then the Angels, they're worse than the Astros. Take 2 out of 3 there. A 7-3 homestand. I know the Astros have been trash going back to last August at home, but things end, right? 7-3, would that be a miraculous homestand? I don't think so. Then you go to Oakland for 3, where you have to deal with hundreds of intimidating Athletics fans. And then starting Memorial Day Monday, 4 at Seattle. And just to close out on the scheduling theme, while the Astros have a 10-game homestand, 7 of the 10 against bad teams, the Mariners have 3 with the Royals. Then they go east for 3 with the Orioles and 4 with the Yankees. I mean, it's right there for the Astros to largely reel in the Mariners by the time they go up to Seattle to just about end this month. And the Texas Rangers, who do they scare? Colorado Rockies actually are close to 500 at Coors Field. They're 9-10 at home. Yeah, well, they're 9-10 at home because they just swept the Rangers 3. Right, so the Rangers are barely over 500. The Astros are within 6 of them. And obviously you have another chunk of head-to-head games there. So for as woeful as the Astros were through the first 40 games, bigger picture, they're in very decent shape. Johnny Nash, by the way. I can see clearly now. The rain is gone. It's like 50 years old.
There you go. For me, it's about the pitching, guys. You look at where they are, 10 games under 500, blown 8 saves at already this point in the season. I didn't expect them to convert all of those, but if you get a high percentage of those and you're in a much better spot. I'm encouraged by Brian Abreu. He's starting to look like the Brian Abreu we remembered. He's not hiding from his fastball anymore. He's got a great fastball. He's throwing strikes. He's attacking guys early in counts and putting them away. That's what you got to be doing. It's nice to see Hader starting to get going. So I just think if they can get the pitching on track, because that's still where they're the worst. They're 28th in ERA in MLB. The only teams that are worse are the Rockies and Marlins. They have a 4.96 ERA. And it's the same thing we talk about every week with the offense. Right now they have the best batting average in MLB, but middle of the pack when it comes to run score. But I'm also encouraged seeing that they're starting to get some hits later in games, starting to put some rallies together, driving some guys in with people on base, and they're getting it from Pena and Jake Myers. Loperfido's starting to look like he might be something. Singleton, the batting average isn't good, but he's giving you some power. Mostly, I'm just kind of concerned, can they get Yordan to turn back into Yordan more consistently? That's really where my main concern is. I mean, Kyle Tucker, he leads baseball in home runs with 13. He's been fantastic. So if you can get Yordan to start turning back into the guy we remember, and then, of course, Alex Bregman, guys. I used to do this with Jose Abreu last year. Unfortunately, I'm having to do it with Breggy this year. 5th lowest OPS in baseball at 534, 4th lowest slugging percentage at 264. And we were starting to think, hey, is he starting to come out of it a little bit? Well, his last 7 games hitting 207. Get this, 1 double in his past 24 games, 2 extra base hits in his last 24 games. So, yeah, definitely the right move to move Bregman down in the order. It's just hopefully he'll start getting it going. And that's, we talked about this before the show started today. We remember how bad Tucker was in the playoffs last year. I mean, he was just lost at the plate. And look what he's doing now, leading MLB in homers. Gives me a little glimmer of hope. Maybe Breggy can turn things around and get back to the Bregman we all love and remember.
The biggest issue remains stabilizing with who is in the rotation and then the performance of those guys in the rotation. Josh mentioned 28th overall in earned run average. They start the second quarter of the season with worse numbers in the starting rotation. 5.25 ERA, also good for 28th among the 30 teams because they need their better pitchers to be consuming most of the innings. Look, the Tigers' offense is a joke. But Verlander was crisp with his command. So if that was a platform game in terms of building himself up and just being good, solid Justin Verlander, not super duper star Justin Verlander, but coming off getting pasted by the Yankees. Okay, that was a step in the right direction. Javier, it was his first start back, so I don't want to overly penalize him for getting destroyed in the 1 loss in Detroit. Framber, you just need to have pitched decently. Consistently, not a 250 ERA, sub 350 would be okay, I think. And then Ronel Blanco, you just cross your fingers, right? The ERA has been climbing, but so gradually because he continues to give good work every time out. But he's not going to wind up with a 223 ERA. What does he wind up with? 323? Or does he really hit a wall a la JP France in the last 6-8 weeks, especially with workload concerns that'll creep in with Ronel Blanco? And then who wins that 5th starter sweepstakes? And let's remember, the Astros are still early now into a stretch of playing 29 games in 30 days, where the plan actually was to use 6 starters. So does that include both Arrighetti and Brown? Ideally not, but I don't think you want to have a diet of Justin Verlander starting on 4 days rest at 41 years of age, right? They have a start Thursday that, to me, at this point, probably goes to Hunter Brown, unless they're thinking, okay, Javier didn't last long, so you can bring him back on 4 days rest and hope to accelerate his buildup that way. But, for being 15-25, it could be a hell of a lot worse than it is for the Astros.
I wanted to jump in on Verlander real quick. What is this narrative that he's washed in some kind of bum this year? It's driving me crazy. He has one game where he gave up more than 2 runs this season. It was against the Yankees the other day. Yeah, he was terrible in that game and he got blasted. But let's not act like he's been terrible all season. Like I said, one game given up over 2 runs. And the other thing to keep in mind, he's only had 5 starts.
Right.
That's all. Look at the sample size there. So I know some of the advanced numbers, the fit for Verlander haven't been great. But as far as the actual, how many runs has he given up? Is he giving you a chance to win the game? We saw the strikeouts have an uptick against Detroit the other day. I think Verlander's going to be fine. And then the Javier thing you hit on, Brandon. What worries me about Javier is where the velo was in that game, hitting 89, 90. But it makes me wonder, is this a deal where he's kind of like Fromber, where he's throwing slower to make sure he's throwing strikes? Because Javier was really wild the other day. Is he taking a little off to try and get it over the plate? Or is that just what he has to give you right now? I'm going to be curious to watch his next start and see if that velo is riding around 90 again.
If so, he needs to throw harder because he was getting it over the plate. I mean, right over the freaking middle of the plate. I'm not worried about it at this point because it's not like he's coming off forearm tenderness or an elbow, right? It was a stiff neck that sent him to the injured list, but it absolutely bears watching.
It does, and we don't know what the extent of that injury actually was because of just the secretive nature of the organization. So we don't know what what specifically was wrong with him and how severe it was. We just see that he's back. But it does kind of seem like the entire organization's kind of clutching right now, or clinching, I should say, just given the fact that, not just the performances at the plate, but the fact that you would rush Christian Javier back. And he's such an important piece of this puzzle. Like, bring him back when he's right. You guys covered a lot of ground, so I'll try to just kind of stick and move here with some thoughts. Josh, you mentioned Pena's resurgence, and that has just been a breath of fresh air for this team. Dusty was pinch hitting for him in the postseason last year, so the fact that this guy's someone you can actually consider strongly to drive in runs and kind of move him up in that lineup is amazing. Also, we saw some roster moves. I don't think we've touched on this yet, but Jolks and Belak DFA'd over the weekend. Obviously, those moves are made to make way for returning players, and in Belak's case, he just was out of options. As you're getting these guys back, as you bring a Christian Javier back, and Urquidy, could be on the way as well. Hunter Brown's had a rough year, but looked good in garbage time relief when Javier had imploded. And then you mentioned Blanco having, an amazing an arrival here, just some stellar set of performances so far this season. Spencer Arrighetti and Brown are obviously, on the margins here. Josh, you mentioned before we went on your observation of, you thought it was interesting that Brown came in for relief instead of Arrighetti. Charlie, where do you see these guys playing out? I mean, obviously we have a much larger sample size of Brown. I've heard a lot of fans clamoring that they'd like to see Brown out of the bullpen since his starts just really haven't, done much for him. He leaves a lot to be desired, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Spencer Arrighetti, a lot more of the unknown there. And then Sean Dubin, we're seeing a lot more of him in leverage situations. How do you think this is all going to play out when the dust settles on the season and this team becomes who they're going to be this season?
Yeah. I think a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned ongoing auditions, at the major league level with a contending team, or you believe still a contending team, not the ideal, but meritocracy between Arrighetti and Brown, with Urquidy starting to creep on the horizon, right? 1, maybe 2 more rehab starts. Now, I'm not banking on Urquidy coming back and being just a rock solid fifth starter. His earned run average was over 5 last season, but it was 392 through a healthy 2022. That would be excellent if you could get a consistent 5 2/3 innings on average at a sub-4 ERA from your number 5 starter. They just need to get away from these games where they just get destroyed in the early innings. The Astros have been a lousy come-from-behind team, but no team is going to make a good living coming back from 5-0 down in the third inning, from 7-0 down in the second inning. So, I think they still believe, or is it more just hope that Hunter Brown can be the truth? His fastball command is terrible, and his fastball's not that good that he can just overpower everyone. And if he finds the strike zone once in a while, but he's wild high so often, he's just not polished and good enough to be a legit major league starting pitcher. I think Arrighetti also has command issues, which is why Urquidy, who does not walk guys, is going to get an opportunity. Again, where do the Astros fall in this stretch of 29 games in 30 days on using 6 starters, right? Because even if Urquidy comes back and you have Verlander, Valdez, Javier, Blanco, Urquidy, you'd still need Arrighetti or Brown to be that number 6 guy.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what they're going to do. I think a lot of it's going to ride on how Arrighetti performs in this, next few days here, and of course the timetable for Urquidy. But they're no stranger to this. When Verlander was getting rocked against the Yankees, it's what Charlie just hit on right there: fastball command. He was either wilder in the zone, or he was a little wild off the plate, walking guys, putting more guys on base, and then missing over the middle of the plate. Fastball command is so much. It's what was killing JP France earlier in the year and sent him down. It's been plaguing Hunter Brown all season long. And I know there's been a lot of call for, what about the pitching coaches? Everybody's talking about Espada. Does he need to be held accountable? What about the pitching coaches? But I will say this: is it the pitching coach's fault that you can't throw your fastball where you're trying to throw it? I mean, I know they can work on mechanics and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, you're out there on the mound by yourself. And if you leave it over the middle of the plate with your fastball, big league hitters are going to crush it, man. You got to stay on the corners, and they're just not doing a lot of that. So I would like to see a little more accountability. We don't talk much about the pitching coaches. And so we hit on earlier in the video, their ERA is terrible. They're third worst in baseball. Clearly, pitching is a huge problem for this club this year.
Chandler Rome tweeted out before we got recording today. Chandler Rome tweeted out about the StatCast numbers on Jose Abreu, their bat tracking data, and it shows that Jose Abreu's average bat speed 72.6 miles per hour. So he notes that would seem to back up both Espada and Dana Brown's insistence that it's still in there. I have a lot of thoughts. I'm going to tee it up for you guys. Are you buying that Jose Abreu's bat speed is in any way indicative that a competent batter still lives inside of Jose Abreu's body?
No. Look, it's a fun metric, and it has some value, like exit velocity. I don't care if your bat speed is Mach 1. If it doesn't hit the freaking baseball, it does not matter. I don't care if your bat speed could, chop down a sequoia in milliseconds. If you're late getting to the ball, you're going to foul it off. So I don't care. Jose Altuve's bat speed stinks. Well, Jose Altuve is an amazing hitter. Jose Abreu, with this supposed still excellent bat speed, washed up until or unless he proves otherwise. And who is betting on Jose Abreu at this point, unless you love a long shot and have money to fritter away? So that he still has bat speed means nothing to me.
Yeah, and this is new. they just launched this new StatCast. I guess new analytics here on Baseball Savant, and I thought it was interesting. My point being, like, this is brand new. Who knows if they're still kind of figuring this out? But you look at who's number 1 on the Astros. It's Trey Cabbage with 76.4, the best bat speed on the whole team, and 15th on the list. Basically, dead last is Altuve at 68.8. So this doesn't really go with the eye test from what I see. I feel like Altuve's got pretty good bat speed. I mean, Yordan is second on the list, and then Loperfido and Pena follow him up, and then there's Abreu. So I figure as we kind of watch this develop and see how this evolves, we'll know a little more information about it. But it is interesting. It's one data point. It's not everything, but it is one data point that maybe Abreu's not recognizing pitches quickly enough at the bat speed's not the problem. Maybe it's his mechanics. Who knows? It could be a lot of different things, but we know this. That guy did not look like a big league hitter really for the last 2 years outside of the postseason. So I think if you asked a bunch of Astros fans, they kind of like what Singleton's doing, even though the batting average isn't very good. He is doing that thing that we've been hoping he would do. He's hitting for power. That was the thing last year early in this season. We're like, where's the power? Well, we're starting to see that a little bit. So if you can at least just get some home runs out of him, and he plays a pretty good defensive first base, at least compared to Abreu, it's not bad. I think you'll live with that.
Nobody hits a baseball harder than Giancarlo Stanton. When he hits the baseball, he's a 210 hitter, right? Ohtani consistently knocks the crap out of the ball. Well, he's hitting 340. That's a great hitter. Bat speed does not make you a great hitter. It's making contact with the ball, and then you get into angle of connection, what you can barrel up. So again, I don't care if Abreu's bat speed was 200 miles per hour. What's his batting average? What's his slugging percentage? What's his OPS? Bad, worser, and worsest.
All due respect to Stanton, I think Singleton's story is a lot more entertaining at this point. And when he hits a third deck homer, I think that's a better story just because of the entirety of his career arc and story arc to this point. And look, I mean, he's giving you, like, he walks too, like Singleton's he gives you exponentially more than what Abreu was giving you at first. And you were already planning on fading whatever Abreu was going to give you anyway. So like if Abreu was giving you what Singleton is giving you, you probably would have been okay with it. You'd be like, well, not okay. I don't want to frame it like that. You wouldn't be okay with it, but you'd be like, well, you can live with it. And right now they can live with what John Singleton's giving them. And getting back to the analytics and basing your appraisal off of what some numbers tell you. And I don't want to sound like a Jeff Bagwell and say the spreadsheets don't play the game, but it is one of the things that's incredibly frustrating that I push back on when the Jake Myers truthers tweet out about how Jake Myers is a superior outfielder because of the ground that he covers and his arm velo. Those stats don't matter as much when you're misplaying balls, when you're overthrowing your cutoff man, or you throw to the wrong base. So I'm sure he appears to be a fantastic athlete. Those stats individually don't always add up to someone being a really good defensive outfielder or just outfielder in general. Again, I'm happy for Jake Myers. I'm not anti-Jake Myers. Whatever contributions he can give you, I think you consider, like John Singleton, as a bonus. It shouldn't be anything, especially offensively, should be anything you expect. But for both of those guys, especially Singleton's actually played a very competent first base. So anyway, rant over with on that point. Guys, I want to pivot here because there seems to be a mole in the Astros organization. We're going to talk about that on part 2. You can hear the full episode of Stone Cold Stros. It's actually up right now at your favorite podcast provider. But to watch that conversation, you're going to look for part 2 of this conversation. We're going to post that shortly here on YouTube. And as always, go Stros.